In today's episode of the Giraldo Show, we're going to talk about a Trump administrator shredding the Democrats' impeachment attempt in a scathing legal letter, ESPN and the entire China and Hong Kong situation, and Matt Lauer and his recent open letter. My name is Sebastian Giraldo, and you're listening to the Giraldo Show. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Giraldo Show. My name is Sebastian Giraldo, and you are listening to the Giraldo Show. So in today's episode, we're going to get right into some of the stories. Our first story, we're going to start with kind of the shorter stories and then move on to the longer ones. So ESPN, for those who don't know, it's a sports channel, sports central website, whatever you want to call it. It just focuses on sports. So here's what happened. Recently, SportsCenter aired an illegitimate map of China on Wednesday morning that featured Chinese propaganda claiming that the communist nation owns the disputed South China Sea, Taiwan, part of the Philippines, and Arunachal Pradesh. So this map is known as China's 10 dash line, which features 10 dash lines instead of 9 dash lines to mark a huge swath of the South China Sea in a tongue-shaped encirclement as Chinese territory. So GMA, a major national commercial broadcast television and radio network in the Philippines, reported in 2013, Brunei, Malaysia, the Philippines, Taiwan, and Vietnam have been contesting China's massive claim of the territory. 9 dashes in the new Chinese map are in the South China Sea, and a 10th dash has been placed near Taiwan, purportedly to signify that territory status as a Chinese province. So pretty much what we have is ESPN and SportsCenter specifically. They are pretty much going along with what China has been spreading as a propaganda map. So pretty much the 10-dash version, as I mentioned before, it includes a lot of territories and areas that the Chinese don't really control in comparison to a 9-dash line, which is what they actually do control. So that has gotten a lot of flack. So Ankit Panda, who is the senior editor of The Diplomat, noted that the map also purportedly included Arunachal Pradesh, which is a state of India, in the map of China. So we have a propaganda map of China, and we have SportsCenter putting out that map on their TV show, and it includes part of India. Nowhere is that ever reported to be part of China, but apparently China owns that part, apparently, I guess. Attorney Andrew Kloster called the map literal Chinese state propaganda that no one outside mainland China recognizes as being legitimate. So again, we have ESPN doing similar things to what the NBA was doing earlier in the week, where the NBA pretty much gave up against China because to try to hold on to business, and ESPN is doing the same situation. They're putting out false propaganda maps for every viewer to see, and if you're not keen enough to look up those maps, you're going to think that, wow, China owns a lot of territory, when in fact that's not true. Kloster writes, just so people know, this is literal Chinese state propaganda, and the map is instantly recognizable to anyone half-schooled in this. Any Taiwanese or Vietnam citizen would see the problem. This is not a map anyone uses outside mainland China. Again, mainland China, pretty communist country, has a lot of propaganda in it to try to convince people in that state that they actually own a lot more. Anyone outside of China obviously is not going to use that map. So again, this comes as the decision of ESPN to use this map comes as not as a direct result, but almost as a response to what the NBA had to do, or as a response to what they saw the NBA do with the entire Hong Kong and China debacle. And for those who don't know, I have an episode on that I released yesterday about Houston Rockets GM Daryl Morey releasing a tweet in support of Hong Kong, then deleting the tweet, and then the NBA basically cared more about their business deals than what they had with freedom. The Ringer reports the Houston Rockets suddenly find themselves in the middle of a geopolitical controversy that could put their chief front office executive's job in jeopardy. After general manager Daryl Morey expressed support in a since-deleted tweet for pro-democracy efforts in Hong Kong, the Chinese government, the Chinese Basketball Association, and various Chinese businesses quickly denounced Morey and moved to sever ties with the Rockets. As a consequence, league sources told The Ringer that Rockets ownership has debated Morey's employment status and whether to replace him. So we have here the actual organization of the Houston Rockets is actually debating whether or not to fire Morey because of a pro-freedom tweet, because that's pretty much all it was. He was supporting the people of Hong Kong to have their freedom, and we have the NBA and even the organization where he works at debating on whether to fire him because of severed ties with China. So really interesting story here, because we have ESPN and the NBA that are trying to keep ties with China, and it's not looking good for anyone who's been involved in this story. So on Sunday, NBA Chief Communications Officer Mike Bass released the following statement. We recognize that the views expressed by Houston Rockets General Manager Daryl Morey have deeply offended many of our friends and fans in China, which is regrettable. While Daryl has made it clear that his tweet does not represent the Rockets or the NBA, the values of the league support individuals educating themselves and sharing their views on matters important to them. We have great respect for the history and culture of China and hope that sports and the NBA can be used as a unifying force to bridge cultural divides and bring people together. So this statement, again, similar to what Adam Silver said, pretty much, we apologize to all of our fans in China that might have been offended by one of the general managers of one of our teams supporting freedom, pretty much is what it's saying. Daryl Morey had to apologize for tweeting for pro-freedom, which is honestly just horrible. Imagine having to apologize for supporting a cause for freedom. Imagine back in the 1700s when we had to fight for our freedom. Imagine apologizing to the British, be like, oh, I'm sorry, we beat you guys and we had our independence. It doesn't make any sense, but I guess he's just trying to keep his job, and yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what the story has been. It's an interesting situation, to say the least. Again, that support to Hong Kong, who are fighting for their freedom and for democracy. They've had their rights taken away unjustly, and they need to fight for them, and I think they are doing that. Okay, next story is about Matt Lauer. So for those who don't know, it recently was made known that Matt Lauer had some sexual misconduct accusations. NBC News has made it clear that it stands with Lauer's accusers. The embattled former host has felt compelled to write a lengthy open letter expressing his regrets for having chosen to stay silent and denouncing the allegations of his accusers. So here's the entire text there's an entire text of the letter. I'm going to go ahead and post that into the description. I'm not going to read the entire thing because I want to try to keep this episode a bit shorter. Here's a brief summary. Over the past 2 years, people have asked why I have not spoken out to defend myself more vigorously against some of the false and salacious allegations leveled at me. This is reported by The Hollywood Reporter, and again, the full letter is going to be in the description of the episode. It is a fair question, and the answer is deeply personal. Despite my desire to set the record straight and confront the individuals making false allegations, I wanted nothing less than to create more headlines my kids would read and a new gathering of photographers at the end of our driveway. So I decided to stay quiet and work on repairing my relationship with the people I love. It has been the most important full-time job I've ever had. But my silence has been a mistake. Today, nearly 2 years after I was fired by NBC, old stories are being recycled, titillating details are being added, and a dangerous and defamatory new allegation is being made. All are being spread as part of a promotional effort to sell a book. It's outrageous. So after not speaking out to protect my children, it is now with their full support I say, enough. So for those who don't know about Matt Lauer, he was fired back in November of 2017 after a series of allegations came out for some sexual misconduct. There was a book that was recently released by a woman named Farrow, I believe, called Catch and Kill: Lies, Spies, and a Conspiracy to Protect Predators. It was going to be released in October 15th. There are multiple outlets that reported on some of the book's key claims. So apparently there are some allegations of former NBC News employee Brooke Neville's, and these are going to be allegations against Matt Lauer, so this is the new allegation that he was talking about. In Sochi, Neville's was tasked with working with former Today co-author anchor Meredith Vieira, who had been brought back to the show to do Olympics coverage. In Neville's account, one night over drinks with Vieira at the hotel bar where the NBC News team was staying, they ran into Lauer, who joined them. At the end of the night, Neville's, who had 6 shots of vodka, side note, that's a lot of shots of vodka, be responsible when if you're ever going to drink alcohol. It's bad. It's bad news. I personally don't drink. That's out of my own decision. But if you're going to ever drink, please be responsible with it. But anyways, Neville's, who had 6 shots of vodka, ended up going to Lauer's hotel room twice. Once to retrieve her press credential, which Lauer had taken as a joke, and the second time because he invited her back. Neville's, Farrow writes, had no reason to suspect Lauer would be anything but friendly based on prior experience. Once she was in his hotel room, Neville's alleges Lauer, who was wearing a t-shirt and boxers, pushed her against the door and kissed her. He then pushed her onto the bed, flipping her over, asking if she liked anal sex, Farrow writes. She said that she declined several times. According to Neville, she was in the midst of telling him that she wasn't interested again when he just did it. Lauer, she said, didn't use lubricant. The encounter was excruciatingly painful. It hurt so bad, I remember thinking, is this normal? She told me she stopped saying no, but wept silently into a pillow. Lauer then asked her if she liked it. She tells him yes. So, interesting story there. We have an accusal, a new one of Matt Lauer with Neville's. And apparently, Lauer forced himself onto Neville's to have anal sex. So Neville's told Farrell that the incident was non-consensual in the sense that I was too drunk to consent, and she allegedly told him multiple times she did not want to perform the act. In his open letter, Lauer blasts Neville claims, claiming that she willfully lied about the nature of her relationship in the encounter. So here's a part of the letter that Lauer writes to try to defend himself against the allegations. The story Brooke tells is filled with false details intended only to create the impression that this was an abusive encounter. Nothing could be further from the truth. There was absolutely nothing aggressive about that encounter. Brooke did not do or say anything to object. She certainly did not cry. She was a fully enthusiastic and willing partner. At no time did she behave in a way that made it appear she was incapable of consent. She seemed to know exactly what she wanted to do. The only concern she expressed was that someone might see her leaving my room. She embraced me at the door as she left. This encounter, which she now falsely claims was an assault, was the beginning of our affair. It was the first of many sexual encounters between us over the next several months. We returned to New York, we both communicated by text and by phone, we met for drinks, and she met me in my apartment on multiple occasions to continue our affair. Our meetings were arranged mutually. At no time during or after her multiple visits to my apartment did she express in words or actions any discomfort with being there or with our affair. She also went out of her way to see me several times in my dressing room at work, and on one of those occasions, we had a sexual encounter. It showed terrible judgment on my part, but it was completely mutual and consensual. So we have here, Lauer isn't denying that the event ever happened. He is just saying that Neville's did not object at all to what was happening. He doesn't deny any of the accusations of that they encountered in the sexual activity. He is saying that Brooke's story, or Neville's, I'm going to keep calling her Neville's consistently lied about details in the story. According to Lauer, there was no crying, there was no objection. According to him, it was completely consensual. According to her, it was non-consensual. So we just have to see when more evidence comes out. And then he goes on to mention that he's had this affair. He had this affair with Neville's over the next months. He said that they met a lot of times mutually, continued their affair, had more probable sexual activity. So Lauer then continues his letter, and this is going to be the last excerpt that I read of the letter. It was not until I was called to speak in to an NBC attorney on November 28th, 2017, that I first learned Brooke had any complaint. I answered all questions openly and honestly for more than an hour. At that meeting, I was never told that Brooke claimed their encounter in Sochi was non-consensual. Had I been, I would have defended myself immediately. After Brooke filed her complaint in late 2017, her attorney publicly insisted she wanted to remain anonymous. He said she wanted NBC to do the right thing, but within a year, she was reportedly out trying to sell a book, and it appears that she also sought a monetary payment from NBC. She is making outrageous and false accusations to help sell a different book and stepping into the spotlight to cause as much damage as she can. Very, very interesting and detailed story there. We have Matt Lauer. Matt Lauer, again, he's not denying that this sexual activity occurred. He's not denying that. He said that it did happen. What he is denying, though, is that it was non-consensual. He's claiming that it was completely consensual, and obviously Neville's is claiming it was non-consensual. Again, legally, I can't pick a side. I'm just gonna leave it at that. But we have to see if more evidence is going to eventually come out. All right, last story of the day is a Trump administrator who shreds the Democrats' impeachment attempt in a scathing legal letter. So, very recently, the Trump administration pretty much, in quotes, made a declaration of war on the House over the impeachment inquiry, pretty much saying that the White House is not really going to collaborate a lot with the House in terms of the impeachment inquiry due to illegitimate proceedings. So this letter lists 3 core reasons why the Trump administration would not cooperate with the current illegitimate proceedings. Number 1, the inquiry is constitutionally invalid and violates basic due process rights and the separation of powers. And number 2, the invalid impeachment inquiry plainly seeks to reverse the election of 2016 and to influence the election of and 2020. And number 3, there is no legitimate basis for your impeachment inquiry. Instead, the committee's actions raise serious questions. So, in a statement that White House Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham wrote, the president has done nothing wrong, and the Democrats know it. For purely political reasons, the Democrats have decided their desire to overturn the outcome of the 2016 election allows them to conduct a so-called impeachment inquiry that ignores the fundamental rights guaranteed to every American. So, we've heard this story a couple of times that this is due only to a political outcome. It's not actually has nothing to do with actual impeachment, with an actual crime. It has to do with getting back at President Trump for losing the 2016 election and not allowing him to be reelected in 2020, or at least trying to deny him a reelection in 2020. Included with Grisham's statement was a letter from Cipollone that dismantled many of the claims made by Democrat leaders in the recent weeks and seriously damaged the credibility of their unofficial impeachment inquiry. So here's a letter that Cipollone wrote to Democrat leaders Nancy Pelosi, Eliot Engel, Adam Schiff, and Elijah Cummings. I'm going to go ahead and summarize what is being said. I'll read a little bit of it, but I'll try to summarize the rest. I write on behalf of President Donald J. Trump in response to your numerous legally unsupported demands made as part of what you have labeled contrary to the Constitution of the United States and all past bipartisan precedent as an impeachment inquiry. As you know, you have been designed and implemented your inquiry in a manner that violates fundamental fairness and constitutionally mandated due process. Again, I'm going to link the full letter in the description of the episode. So here we're going to get into some examples that Cipollone, and again, I apologize if I mispronounce some of these names. He's saying that they've denied the right for the president to cross-examine witnesses, to call witnesses, to receive transcripts of testimony, to have access to evidence, to have counsel present, and many other basic rights guaranteed to all Americans. And I do believe this is true. This is similar to the letter that Kevin McCarthy, House Minority Leader, sent a week back. I had an episode on that as well if you want to go check out what those letters said. But basically, there has been no proof, or there has been no outward statement that Donald Trump is going to be able to cross-examine witnesses or call witnesses of his own. Cipollone continues saying that they have conducted the proceedings in secret, and this is somewhat true. Again, the McCarthy letter reveals that Pelosi hasn't really revealed any details besides just saying that it's going to be a fair and equal trial. Even though that could imply that it's going to really be fair and equal, I think it is important for more details to come out specifically. He says, you have violated civil liberties and the separation of powers by threatening executive branch officials, claiming that you will seek to punish those who exercise fundamental constitutional rights and prerogatives. All of this violates the Constitution, the rule of law, and every past precedent. Again, we've had a couple of impeachment trials in the past, and we've seen that in all of these trials it's been actually fair and equal. We've had the presidents of the past bring in witnesses to attempt to defend himself. Simply put, you seek to overturn the results of the 2016 election and deprive the American people of the president they have freely chosen. And this is, again, where some people on the right argue that this is just a political ploy. They are just trying to overturn the results of the 2016 election and try to get him out of office and try to deny a Trump 2020 presidential run. As one member of Congress explained, he is concerned that if we don't impeach the president, he will get reelected. So there gives some proof to this could just be a political ploy. We've heard Nancy Pelosi in the past say that if we don't impeach him, he's going to get reelected, and we can't allow that. So it sounds a bit suspicious, to say the least. For his part, President Trump took the unprecedented step of providing the public transparency by declassifying and releasing the record of his call with President Zelensky of Ukraine. And again, this is true. The Democrats were claiming that Trump had stuff to hide and that he wouldn't release the transcript. And then when Trump actually publicly released the transcript, they really didn't have much to go on because, again, no direct quid pro quo was in the statement. In addition, information has recently come to light that the whistleblower had contact with Chairman Schiff's office before filing the complaint, and we saw that. We've seen that in the news recently that first of all, Schiff lied about what was in the Trump transcript. Second of all, he lied about having communication with the whistleblower beforehand when he actually did, because in tweets before the whistleblower complaint officially came out, he pretty much mirrored exactly what was being said by the whistleblower. For these reasons, President Trump and his administration reject your baselessness, unconstitutional efforts to overturn the democratic process. Your unprecedented actions have left the president with no choice. In order to fulfill his duties to the American people, the Constitution, the executive branch, and all future occupants of the office of the presidency, President Trump and his administration cannot participate in your partisan and unconstitutional inquiry under these circumstances. And then the letter, it's a very long letter. It continues on. It's pretty much the 3 reasons that I gave at the beginning of the episode, or the beginning of this story. Number 1, I'll read them again. Number 1, your inquiry is constitutionally invalid and violates basic due process and rights and separation of powers. Number 2, the invalid impeachment inquiry plainly seeks to reverse the election of 2016 and to influence the election of 2020. And number 3, there's no legitimate basis for your impeachment inquiry. Instead, the committee's actions raise serious questions. So the letter continues on by going into specific details about those 3 concerns that were raised by this letter. The letter is pretty long. Again, I'll link it in the description. I'm not really going to go into more detail because this episode is already pretty long. So we're just gonna go ahead and end it here. Thank you very much for listening to today's episode. I hope that you had a good time listening, and I hope you can give it a like and a follow on any platform that you support. And I'll see you again tomorrow. My name is Sebastian Giraldo, and you are listening to The Giraldo Show.